Let's meditate briefly before we start the talk. Take a couple of good long, deep in and out breaths. Notice where you feel the breathing most prominently in the body. Focus your attention there. And as before, if long breathing feels good, keep it up. If it doesn't feel good, you can change. Try shorter, more shallow, heavier, lighter, faster, slower. Notice what rhythm and texture of breathing feels best for the body right now, because the needs of the body will change as your mind settles down. What felt comfortable to begin with may not feel comfortable after a while, so you change. Try to keep on top of what the body needs right now. Because an important principle in getting the mind to settle down is that you give it a good place to stay. A place that feels comfortable, a place that feels reassuring, a place where you feel at home. And because this is your home, you can decorate it any way you like. This is an area of awareness that no one else can know. You're the only one who can know how your breath feels from within. This is the area where the Buddha has us focus our attention. How the body feels from within, how your mind feels from within. So you're free to change the breath as you like, change the point of your focus as you like. As the breathing feels good, you can survey the different parts of the body. Start down around the navel. Locate that part of the body in your awareness. Watch it for a while as you breathe in, breathe out to see what feels good there. And if you notice any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax, so that no new tension builds up as you breathe in, and you don't hold on to any tension as you breathe out. Then move your attention up to the solar plexus, the area right in front of the stomach, and follow the same 3 steps there. 1, locate that part of the body in your awareness. 2, watch it for a while as you breathe in and breathe out to see what feels good there. And then 3, if there's any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. attention up to the middle of the chest and follow the same steps there. Then move your attention to the base of the throat and follow the same steps there. And then to the middle of the head. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy coming in not only through the nose, but also through the eyes, the ears, in from the back of the neck, down from the top of the head, going deep into the brain. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the entire head into the air, in all directions. If you're meditating on your own, you could continue the survey down the shoulders, down the arms, down the back, down the legs. But for right now, choose any one spot where it seems most comfortable to focus your awareness, where it's easiest to see clearly how the breath feels in that part of the body. Focus your attention there. And then from that spot, allow your awareness to spread to fill the whole body. So you're aware of the whole body breathing in, the whole body breathing out. The range of your awareness may have a tendency to shrink, especially on the out-breath. So keep reminding yourself each time you breathe in, whole body. Each time you breathe out, whole body. And allow the breath to find whatever rhythm feels best in the context of this whole body awareness. invite you to continue meditating as I give the talk. As I mentioned this afternoon, the main danger in our lives is not that we're going to lose our wealth or our health or our relatives. The main danger is that we're going to act unskillfully, to abandon our virtue, our precepts, to abandon our right view. And so we need protection, so we can protect our skillful attitudes. In this sense, the worst danger that can come from outside is not what other people might do to you. They might kill you, but they can only kill you once. They might steal from you, but they can only steal your material possessions. But if they get you to act in unskillful ways, if they influence you to adopt wrong views, then they've really done you harm. So that's the main danger from outside. We live in a dangerous world because there are so many people with wrong view, and they're all too happy to influence us to adopt their wrong views as well. But we don't live only in a dangerous world. We're a dangerous people because we do have our defilements: greed, aversion, delusion, lust, jealousy. These qualities, if we don't have some control over them, can influence us to act in ways that are going to be to our long-term harm. And then finally, the third level of danger is that no matter how skillfully we may act, even our skillful habits, if we don't find something that's of more lasting value, in other words, if we don't find awakening, even our skillful habits will develop us in ways that would be subject to change. The happiness they give cannot last forever. And there is a danger that when we start enjoying the results of our skillful actions, we start getting lazy, we start getting complacent. As the Buddha said, one of the rewards of virtue, one of the rewards of generosity, is that you're reborn in heaven, join the devas. But the devas are a pretty complacent lot. And it gets very easy to see that life is easy up there, you don't have to try too hard. And you start getting lazy, you start getting complacent yourself. And as the Buddha said, the number of devas who fall from heaven and fall below the human realm is far greater than those who come back down as human beings. So even skillful qualities have their dangers. And it's to counteract these three levels of danger: the danger of other people's unskillful attitudes, the danger of our own unskillful qualities, and the danger even of our skillful qualities, that the Buddha taught the teachings of refuge. As you may know, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And as it turns out, we take refuge on these three things on three levels to correspond to those three levels of danger. The first level is the external level. The Buddha as the person, Prince Siddhartha, who was born 2,600 years ago, left home because he was dissatisfied with his princely pleasures, his princely powers, and was able to find an answer to the question, is it possible through human effort to find true happiness, find a happiness that doesn't change? He found that it was possible. The Dhamma on the external level is the teachings that he left behind, which have been recorded, passed on, That also includes the teachings of his disciples and the long line of disciples that have come down to the present moment that give us information. This is what the Buddha taught. These are the principles that he advised us to follow, to show that yes, we too could find true happiness. When the Buddha gained awakening, he didn't claim that it was because of some special quality that he had that no one else could have. He said it was based on qualities like ardency, heedfulness, resolution, which are qualities we all have to some extent. It's a question that he developed them further than we have. But he said these are qualities that anyone can develop. And so we take refuge also in the Sangha of noble disciples, the Sangha of monks, who've passed on those teachings, passed on the example that the Buddha left behind. Now these provide refuge on an external level, to counteract the influences we may get from other people who say there is no happiness beyond which it's happiness of the senses. There is no life after death. The only way to find happiness is to fight for it, to abuse other people, because that's the way of the world. So when we see other people advocating unskillful attitudes, we can keep remembering, there was the Buddha, he did find awakening and he found true happiness, not by harming anybody at all. In fact, he found that true happiness is totally harmless. So we take him and the Dharma and the Sangha on the external level as our protection from bad influences from outside. When our friends try to get us to drink, our friends try to get us to engage in corruption, we keep reminding ourselves, these are not really our friends. Our true friends are the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We live in a world where it has been shown that true happiness can be found in a harmless way. So that's our refuge on an external level. But on the external level, it doesn't go very deep, because there are still those problems inside the mind. Greed, aversion, delusion, ill will, sloth, restlessness, anxiety, fear, doubt. And that's when we have to take refuge on the first internal level, which is basically taking the example of the Buddha and putting it into practice, taking the example of the Dharma and the Sangha, putting it into practice ourselves, developing their qualities in our own hearts and minds, in our behavior. For example, we look at the Buddha, think of the qualities that he had. His main qualities were were wisdom, compassion, and purity. It was through his wisdom that he gained awakening. It was through his compassion that he taught others. And also that he found that he wanted to find happiness in a harmless way. It's through his purity when he began to realize that he had to follow through not only with good intentions, but skillful intentions. In other words, intentions that really were harmless. So we see his three qualities and we try to develop them within ourselves. And he gives advice on how to do that, starting with wisdom. He says, wisdom starts when you ask the question, what, when I do it, will lead to my long-term welfare and happiness? What, when I do it, will lead to my long-term harm and pain? The wisdom in those questions comes down to, one, realizing that the difference between happiness and suffering comes from your own actions. These things don't just come floating by. Secondly, long-term happiness is possible. It's not the case that everything just arises and passes away, arises and passes away at the same rate. Some forms of pleasure last. Others come for a bit and they go away very quickly. So long-term happiness is possible, and it is better than short-term. It's a principle in Dhammapada where the Buddha says, if anyone who sees that there's a greater happiness that comes from being willing to let go of a lesser happiness. Should be willing to let go of that lesser happiness to find the greater happiness. The British translator who translated that into English wrote a footnote. Said this can't possibly be the meaning of this verse because it's too simple, it's too obvious. We don't need a Buddha to tell us. Well, we do need a Buddha to tell us. It may be obvious, but it's very hard for people to follow through. We tend to go for the short term because it's immediate, it's right there. The long term seems a little bit too far away. I have a friend who's an author. And she's a professor at a university, and she also writes novels. And every time she writes a novel, she's invited out to the alumni clubs to read passages from her new novels. And she wrote one novel that was set in 18th century China. The main character is a young woman whose mother has just died. The father has made a promise that he's not going to remarry. He's just going to be loyal to the memory of his first wife and focus on raising the children. Well, the promise doesn't last very long. He's sent away on a government business, comes back, and he has a courtesan as his new wife. The young girl is very upset, but the courtesan is a good woman. She wants to be a good mother. And so in the passage that my friend chose to read from the novel, it's the courtesan, the new mother is playing chess with a young woman. And as they're playing chess, the new mother is saying, if you really want to be happy in life, you have to decide there's one thing you want more than anything else. And you're willing to sacrifice everything else for that one thing. And the young girl is half listening, half not listening. But she's beginning to notice that her mother is a very sloppy chess player, losing pieces all over the board. So she gets more aggressive. Well, it turns out that the mother has been laying a trap. The young girl gets aggressive, but the mother checkmates her. The mother wins. And of course, the way she's playing chess is illustrating the principle she's trying to teach. She was willing to lose her chess pieces for the sake of winning. My friend read this passage to 2 or 3 alumni clubs and discovered that no one wanted to hear the message. We all want to win at chess, but keep all our pieces. It doesn't work that way. Life requires that if you really want to be happy, there's certain things you've got to be willing to give up. This is the basic principle of wisdom, is choosing something really good as the happiness you want to focus on. You want it to be long-term. So that's the basic principle of wisdom. As for compassion, there's a story in the Pali Canon. King Basenadi is in his palace with his queen, Queen Malika. They're one-on-one in the bedroom. And in a tender moment, he turns to her and says, "Is there anyone you love more than yourself?" And you know what he's thinking. He wants her to say, "Yes, Your Majesty, I love you more than I love myself." Typical man. And if this were a Hollywood movie, that's what she'd say. This is not a Hollywood movie, this is the Pali Canon. There's no nonsense in the Pali Canon. And Queen Malika says, "No, there's nobody I love more than myself. And how about you? Is there anybody you love more than yourself?" And the king has to admit, no, there's nobody he loves more than himself. So that's the end of that scene. So the king leaves the palace, goes down to see the Buddha, and tells the Buddha what their conversation was. And the Buddha says, "You know, she's right. You could search the whole world over and not find anyone that you love more than yourself. And in the same way, everyone else loves themselves just as fiercely." And then the conclusion he draws from that is interesting. It's not that this is a dog-eat-dog world and everybody just has to fight for their own happiness. The conclusion is you should never harm anybody or get them to do harm. In other words, in your quest for happiness, your happiness, if you want it to last, it can't depend on other people's suffering. So this is the basic principle of compassion. When you're looking for happiness, you have to think of other people's happiness too. Your happiness can't depend on their suffering. Both because it wouldn't last, and then two, you start realizing that they feel just the way you feel. And that gives rise to a sense of fellow feeling, it gives rise to a sense of compassion. So here again, you develop compassion out of your desire for happiness, wanting a happiness that lasts, and realizing that a happiness that lasts has to be harmless. Finally, there's the principle of purity. And here the Buddha is teaching his son. Rahula, his son, was a young boy at the time, 7 years old. And one day the Buddha comes to visit him, and you get the impression that Rahula probably told a lie that day, because the very first thing the Buddha talks about is lying. Rahula has set out a basin of water with a dipper for the Buddha to wash his feet. The Buddha takes the dipper, washes his feet, leaves a little bit of water in the dipper, and then asks Rahula, "Do you see this water in the dipper? How little there is?" Rahula says yes. And the Buddha says, that's how much goodness there is in someone who tells a deliberate lie without a sense of shame. Then he takes the water, throws it away, says, "See how that water is thrown away?" Yes. In the same way, when someone tells a deliberate lie with no sense of shame, their goodness is thrown away. Then he shows them the empty dipper. See how empty this is? Yes, yes, yes. And Rahul is getting the message. So the Buddha establishes the principle that the basic principle for all forms of goodness is that you're true. You tell the truth. You don't tell a deliberate lie, even in jest. Because you're going to need this principle of truthfulness if you're going to develop the quality of purity. Because the Buddha says you develop purity first by looking at your intentions before you act. You ask yourself, this intention that I have to act or speak or think in this way, will it cause any harm to me or to other people? If you foresee harm, you don't do it. If you don't foresee any harm, you can go ahead and do it. While you're doing it, you ask yourself, this action that I'm doing, is it causing any harm to me or anyone else? If it is causing harm, you stop. You don't see any harm, you can continue with the action. And finally, when the action is done, you look at the long-term consequences. And if you see that you did cause harm, make up your mind not to repeat that action, and then you go talk it over with someone else who's more advanced on the path to get their advice on how not to repeat that mistake. But if you don't see that you did any harm, then the Buddha says, take joy in the fact that you're developing the path, and then continue developing as best you can. So this is how purity is developed, he said. By making sure that your intentions are not only good, but that when you carry through them, they actually are harmless. This is what is the difference between a good intention and a skillful intention. Because sometimes good intentions can be diluted, but a skillful intention has a clear sense of what actions lead to what consequences. So that the happiness you're looking for really is genuine. So these are the qualities of the Buddha, and this is how he explains how you develop these qualities in yourself. The qualities of virtue, qualities of wisdom, qualities of compassion, qualities of purity. You are looking for happiness. The Buddha is not telling you to deny your happiness or to put the happiness of other people ahead of your happiness. He says, if you look for happiness in a way that is wise, compassionate, and pure, it's not going to harm anybody else. And at the same time, you're setting a good example for others. So it's by developing these qualities in yourself that you can protect yourself from your greed, from your aversion, from your delusion. Same with internalizing the Dharma. The Buddha says we take the Dharma as our refuge. We do that by developing right mindfulness. You focus, say, on the body in and of itself. Ardent, alert, mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. The same with feelings, mind states, mental qualities. This becomes your refuge because you need the quality of mindfulness to remember the lessons that you've learned, either from other people or from your own practice. And you strengthen your mindfulness by giving it a foundation here in the present moment. And you try to develop those qualities of mindfulness itself, which, as I said, is the ability to keep something in mind. Alertness, the ability to know what you're doing while you're doing it, and see what consequences are, so you can learn from what's actually happening. And then ardency, which is the desire to do this well. This is where desire plays a role in the path. You have to take responsibility for your actions. You have to want to do things well. And it's that desire to do things well that will carry you through, that will protect you. And as for any concerns about the world, what the Buddha calls greed and distress with reference to the world, realize that the awards of the world, gain, fame, status, these sorts of things, are really not worth getting upset about, not really worth taking seriously. The serious things are the qualities that you're developing in your thoughts and your words and your deeds. And as you develop these qualities inside, these become your internal refuge. Because right mindfulness leads to right concentration. Right concentration provides a basis for discernment. This is how you protect yourself inside, by developing the refuge of the Dharma in your own mind, in your own actions. Then there's the Sangha. And the way you internalize the qualities of the Sangha is that you hold to the principle that the Buddha called practicing the Dharma in accordance with the Dharma. In other words, you don't let your own personal preferences get in the way. As the Buddha pointed out, there are 4 kinds of action in the world. There are things that you like to do and will give good results. Things you don't like to do and will give bad results. Those 2 are no-brainers. If you like to do it, it gives good results, it's easy to do. If you don't like to do it and it gives bad results, it's easy to avoid. The places where it gets difficult, and this is where you have to watch out for your preferences, are things that you like to do but will give bad results. Things that you don't like to do but will give good results. And this, the Buddha said, is a measure of your wisdom, in your ability to talk yourself out of doing things that you like to do but give long-term bad results, and your ability to talk to yourself to want to do things that you don't like to do but will give good results. When the Buddha talks about wisdom, this is how wisdom begins. He doesn't talk about dependent co-arising, he doesn't talk about emptiness, he doesn't talk about not self. He talks about knowing how to look for the long-term consequences and being able to make yourself want to do things that will give long-term good consequences regardless of whether you like doing them or not, and to want to avoid doing things that will give bad consequences even if you do like doing them. So this is the principle that we learn from the Sangha. We can't take our preferences. There's that saying from the 3rd patriarch, the great way is not difficult for those with no preferences. This is what it means. We do prefer to put an end to suffering. We do prefer long-term happiness. But as for what we like to do and don't like to do, we cannot let those preferences get in the way. So when you develop these principles inside, that's when you provide yourself with a true refuge inside. Protect yourself from your own greed, your own aversion, your own delusion. That's the 2nd level of refuge. The 3rd level of refuge is when you realize that even when you do nothing but good things in your actions, in your words, and your deeds, and they have good results, Remember, those good results can't last. And as I said, it's almost as if samsara is a sick joke. You work really hard to do good, and then you get the rewards of doing good, and then those rewards will spoil you if you're not careful. You become careless, you become complacent, you become lazy. So realize that you have to work harder at your practice to go beyond even what is skillful. We talked earlier about the 5 steps for overcoming unskillful qualities in the mind. In other words, you see their origination. When they start, what sparks them? You see how they pass away. And then you see how they come back again. When they come back again, the question is, what's the allure? What do you find attractive about them? This afternoon we talked about fear. Fear itself is not attractive, but what the thing is that we fear losing the things we're attached to, so we have to look at the things we're attached to. What are we attached to? Why do they appeal to us? And then when we see what the appeal is, then we can compare the appeal to the drawbacks. And when we see that the drawbacks outweigh the appeal, then we develop dispassion and let go. That's true letting go. We let go out of understanding. We let go of making a valid judgment as to what is worth doing and what's not worth doing, what's worth holding on to, what's not worth holding on to. Well, ultimately, as you apply this 5-step process to skillful things, eventually you're going to have to apply it to unskillful things. You eventually have to apply it to skillful things as well. See that even the path of practice has its allure, but it also has its drawbacks. It's something that constantly has to be fabricated. You can't keep up doing it. There's no stopping. Until the mind decides, okay, once a happiness that does not depend on fabrication at all, and inclines in that direction. You see that it's inconstant, it's stressful, and it's not worth holding on to. Even that good thing, that's when you let go. When you go totally like that, that's when you find the ultimate refuge, the refuge that doesn't change at all. And that's when you become safe, even from skillful qualities. So when we think about taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, remember, it's not just repeating the words or saying, yes, I believe in that there was a Buddha and he taught the Dhamma and he taught there is the Sangha. You realize, okay, you can take refuge on an external level, on an internal level, on the ultimate level, to protect you from the big dangers of the people outside whose values might pull you to do things unskillfully or do unskillful things. Then you internalize it to protect yourself from your own unskillful qualities. And then finally, reach the ultimate level. This is where the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha really do become a gem. This is the Ratana in the Ratanatraya. Where you find a happiness that doesn't change at all because it lies outside of space and time. It's when you take refuge in the Buddha on these levels that you can overcome all reasons for fear, all reasons for anxiety. And so that you protect yourself from the genuine dangers inside, genuine dangers outside. That's when you're perfectly safe. So those are my thoughts for the evening. Wonder if anyone has any questions.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu for Phra Ajaan's deep sharing indeed for all of us tonight. Well, brothers and sisters, I have about 18 questions submitted to me. So I urge brothers and sisters, perhaps take a moment to reflect through again what we have listened this afternoon from Phra Ajaan Thanissaro, Chao Kun King, and Phra Ajaan Thanissaro again this evening. Perhaps you may have different questions now than what you have written. I would encourage verbal question for this round. Ask it from your heart based on what you have actually listened to. Because some of the questions came actually even beginning of the day. But I'm sure you have changed your mind too. Anyone? Our usherer are ready with their microphone. Oh, you are the usherer, sister. Or you want to ask question? Go ahead, sister.
No, I'm not. I'm just taking the mic for whoever have questions.
Thank you, sister, our usherer. Anyone?
Why don't you start with some of the written questions
Okay.
first?
Okay. They're still shy. Right. So can Bhante explain the difference between neutral feeling and equanimity, upekkha?
Okay, neutral feeling is basically any feeling that is neither pleasant nor painful. Equanimity is a state of mind, the state of mind that does not get upset by things, is not pleased by pleasing things, is not disturbed by disturbing things, but is able to maintain a sense of an even keel. So that's not so much a feeling as an attitude. The attitude, okay, I will not react to what's going on. So that's what equanimity is. Now, equanimity has many levels. There's the equanimity that comes from willpower that basically says, okay, whatever happens, I'm not going to react. And there's a certain amount of, let's say, depression in that attitude. That's something, I'm just going to grit my teeth and I'm not going to react to things. There's a higher level of equanimity, which I mentioned yesterday, which is that when you are able to find a sense of well-being inside, and then when you feel have a sense of well-being here, then you look at the rest of the world and you realize it's not going to affect your sense of well-being. Then it's easier to be equanimous about things outside. How's that now? Okay, that's better. And so that kind of equanimity is coming from a sense of well-being, and so it's not so depressed. It's a kind of equanimity that's healthier. Ajaan used to make the distinction between what he called small-hearted equanimity and large-hearted equanimity. Small-hearted equanimity is basically saying, okay, I can't affect things, so I just have to put up with the fact that I can't change them. And there's an element of depression there. Whereas large-hearted equanimity comes when you have a sense of well-being inside, and you're basically saying, the world can do what they want, I'm fine. Because I do have resources inside.
Thank you, Ajaan. That will lead, I think, to this second question from one of our brother or sister in the Dhamma, is for people having depression, would they be able to meditate?
We had that question yesterday, but yes, it's important that they meditate the right way. I mean, there are some meditations out there that say you can't do anything, you have no choice, just learn how to accept whatever comes up. That makes your depression worse. Because depression is basically a sense of, you lose your sense of agency. There's something you want very much, you're upset about it, but you cannot do anything about it, so you give up. And there's a sense that there's no point in trying to make the world a better place because you can't do anything. So it's that sense of losing agency that we have to counteract. So if there's a type of meditation that will tell you, just accept whatever comes up, you have no free will, you have no choice, stay away from that kind of meditation. The focus on the meditation to say, yes, you can do this. You can focus on your breath this way. You can focus on your mind this way. You can train these qualities in the mind. You can abandon those qualities in the mind. You can play a role in making a change. That kind of meditation can actually get you out of depression.
Phra Ajaan, this continue on to the next question related to meditation. Does a person with dementia able to practice meditation?
Ooh. They would need to do it with someone else present to keep them focused. Because it's very easy when you have dementia to start hallucinating, and then you believe your hallucinations, and that's not going to help at all.
So with close guidance.
The best meditation for someone with dementia is goodwill. Just have them develop thoughts of goodwill as much as they can.
That will lead to the next question, Phra Ajaan. It's interesting, as you're answering it, I'm picking up the different pieces in front of me that all seems, now related. Yeah. This next question, Phra Ajaan, from this person say, if I feel safe, assured, and comfortable with learning meditation by watching the videos available online by established monks and so on and so forth, or by established Buddhist organization, would it be necessary for me to learn the face-to-face meditation, especially in-person teacher to guide me?
Okay, there is the need for an in-person teacher everyone now and then because we have so many blind spots in our minds. You can be comfortable, you can be confident, you can be just perfectly fine with your defilements. And so it needs a teacher to point out that, yes, there's a defilement here that you're not seeing. I knew a monk in Bangkok one time. He told the story of this one woman who came to see him one time. And she said, my defilements are really, really thin. There's almost nothing left. And then he called her, the Thai phrase, for those of you who are Thai, he called her a dog tong. Which literally means golden flower, which sounds kind of nice. But actually, it's basically a woman who, he accused her of being a woman who would be willing to have sex with anybody. That's what it's called a dog tone because it has so many bees on it all at one time. Okay. And so she was livid, so she left. And it was a couple of years later when she finally came back and said, "Thank you for pointing out my defilements." So every now and then you need a teacher to say, yep, you may be satisfied with where you are, you may feel comfortable. These may be established monks, established organizations, but on the video they can't point to you and say, look, you have a defilement right here. So it is good to have face-to-face with someone who's honest.
Thank you, Phra Ajaan. So brothers and sisters, you have Phra Ajaan face-to-face with you now. Would you like to ask verbal question?
And I wish I could just point you to defilements.
Anyone? Good. Hang on, yeah, okay.
Hi, Bante. Is there a true that we can tap on another side of Buddhism to go just to chant and then can go to Dhamma? No need to do meditation. This has been, there are people who talk to me this way, so I just want to understand this point.
Those are the kind of people who would have
It's a shortcut way to go to Dhamma.
Okay. If the Buddha knew a shortcut like that, I'm sure he would have taught it. There's a whole eightfold path, And chanting is not part of the any of the 8 factors. So no, you can't just chant your way to nirvana. So, was that an established monk or an established Buddhist organization that told that to you? So,
Okay.
Thank
Bante,
you,
can I
sister.
ask the next question?
Who is that, please? Can you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, we have multiple hands. Okay. So,
Yeah. Bante,
yes, sister, please go ahead. Yeah, make it short and concise. Yeah.
Bante, I know someone who has schizophrenia and bipolar.
mhm,
Okay, so it's very dukkha for them. Sometimes they have moments of alertness and mindfulness, and they understand some Dhamma. But when they hallucinate, it's really bad, Bante. You know, it's like totally nuts
mhm,
without any control.
mhm.
Okay, and then the medication sometimes makes them very sick. So I once asked a sayadaw, if this life, you know, they have this mental problem, will it carry to the next life? Because it's very difficult for them to meditate or practice mindfulness. You know, as I observe this person who is a close relative, you know, it's like more of practicing mindlessness than mindfulness. You know, so the other day we took her
Sister,
to do...
can I remind you to keep it short
Yeah.
because we have a few questions coming up.
Okay, we took her to the temple to Thambun. And then since we were waiting for the sayadaw to come out, so I told her, you know, when you are free, you can just do walking meditation. You know, so I showed her how. And suddenly she got so agitated, you know. Also partly I feel that some of the doctors, you know, that she had seen, they're very anti-meditation, very anti-mindfulness practice. So the doctor asked her to avoid people like us who teach, who try to guide them with mindfulness. So this is a big problem.
Okay, with someone like that, I would recommend, again, see how she reacts to goodwill meditation, just metta for all beings. And then secondly, focus her on, instead of trying to be mindful, trying to be more generous, and tell her, okay, to try to remember the precepts, because that provides a foundation that she can hold on to. And to the extent that she can develop more goodwill and be more virtuous in her life, that will provide the foundation for a good life the next time around.
Hello. Yes. I would like to ask one question. It's personal. I have been consuming a lot of spiritual teachings for the past maybe 5 to 8 years, and most of the time now I feel like I'm overburdened with all these teachings, and I'm not getting to the real thing, the reality behind the, the real face of reality itself. Reality slips away. The mind is always in control, and mind is still talking about teaching. Don't get distracted. That is my distraction most of the time.
Okay, this is where it's good to think of your mind as being like a committee. Okay, it has the distractions, but there can be part of your mind that can still stay with the breath. It's okay, the distractions may be there, but I'm not going to get involved in them. And as for listening to a lot of Dharma or reading a lot of Dharma, you say, maybe I just should put it down for a while and then just focus on learning how to get some control over at least one member of the committee of my mind. And strengthen that one member, and then the other members eventually will get weaker and weaker and weaker.
Thank you so much.
Any next question from the floor, or else I'll return to the written question.
Written question.
Sister Oswan, Bante in front.
Sky again.
Ajaan, earlier tonight you were encouraging a sense of agency for people, particularly who are suffering from depression.
Mhm.
And in that context, you were talking about agency in terms of generating a sense of well-being on the inside, as opposed to just practicing bare mindfulness without getting involved into the body and mind at all. But how do you know in a given situation where there's the point where we actually need to take action on the outside as opposed to just trying to generate well-being on the inside?
Okay, that's really going to depend on the situation that you're facing. Ask yourself, what is the state of mind from which I'm acting? And if you feel there's any greed, aversion, and delusion in your actions, say, well, I'll hold back for the time being.
And then once the state of mind comes into a balance, then automatically wholesome action is going to rise out of that.
Okay, when you're coming from a better state of mind, one, it's easier to see what needs to be done. And two, if you're dealing with other people, they can sense where you're coming from. And if you're coming from a good place, it's a lot easier for them to take your advice than it is if you're coming from anger or frustration.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to switch to the written question for a while, Prajan. And this question is from a healthcare worker. And this person say, I find difficulty to keep focus on my breath when my mind is full with caring for my patient, serving medicine, suction for the patient, transferring the patient, so on and so forth. How to improve my mind practicing on focusing on my breath?
Okay, this is where it's good to remind yourself that you can breathe in a comfortable way, no matter what the situation is. If you're just telling yourself, well, let's be with the breath, whatever the breath is doing, that gets very boring and very uncomfortable, and the mind will slip away very easily. But if you can remind yourself, while I'm with this difficult person, I can still breathe in a way that's comfortable. So I can I'm coming from a sense of well-being. I can strengthen myself from inside by being with comfortable breath, or an energizing breath when I'm tired, a relaxing breath when I'm tense. And that way the mind tends to gravitate more and more and more to that sense of the well-being that comes from inside.
This is so important for the healthcare worker.
Yes.
Yeah. The wellness of the healthcare worker would definitely support the patient.
Right.
Thank you, Prajan. Yeah. The next question is actually asking about, this is a long one. Dear Phra Ajaan, they say that the world is an illusion. Does that mean that what we see is a creation of all the collective karma? If one starts to see one's own thought, can one create what we want using our positive thoughts?
There's a limit to what you can create using your positive thoughts. Because what we see from the world is a combination not only of present karma, but also past karma. And so sometimes past karma is like a wall. No matter how much you push against it, you can't get through. But you can learn, well, maybe I'm pushing in the wrong way. Maybe I'm making myself suffer because I'm banging my head against a wall. So the world, you can't really say the world is a delusion. It's a construction. It's what we're all constructing together. And it's a combination, as I said, of past karma, present karma. And so where we can make a difference is in the present karma. The past karma we can't change. And the question is, well, which part of your world is past karma, which part of the world is present karma? You don't know until you try to make a few changes here and there. Some things you find, yes, you can change. Other things, no. So what you have to do is focus on what, as I said, these three elements of fabrication. How am I breathing right now? How am I talking to myself right now? What are the perceptions I'm holding in mind? What are the feelings I'm focused on? Those things you know are your present karma. You focus on doing that well. You're being responsible.
Thank you, Phra Ajaan. Shifting to the audience back. Any live question? Ashara, please, microphone.
Thank you, Ajaan. Yesterday, Ajaan answered a question about energetic imbalances and gave some useful but particular methods. I was wondering if, in addition to that, there might be any general principles that one can use to apply different techniques to different situations.
Okay, well, energetic imbalances that come up in the meditation usually come from the fact that you're applying too much pressure to one part of the body and the body's reacting. Now, that you may feel the energetic imbalance at the same spot where you're applying pressure. Sometimes you're not. You're actually applying pressure in one spot and you feel the imbalance in another spot. So you have to be open to the fact, well, maybe the problem is not where I feel the pressure, maybe it's someplace else.
By applying pressure, Ajaan, what do you mean?
Well, it's a sense of tightness in the body or a sense of just too much energy in the body in one spot.
And if that feels involuntary, how do we change it?
Okay, the question is this coming from past karma or present karma? You don't know. And if it turns out there's nothing you can do to make the change, focus your attention on your hands, focus your attention on your feet. Get away from where the pressure is. And then think, okay, everything in the body is wide open in all directions. See what happens.
And similarly to small like energetic shocks or bursts, can those just be ignored or?
Just accept the fact that there was a release and let it go.
So there's no need to work out past karma or anything, just
No.
go with what's going on.
Just let it go and then continue with your meditation.
Thank you, Ajaan.
Any further question from the floor? Yes, Ashara.
Phra Ajaan, can I? Everybody talks about meditating, and the more we meditate, obviously, the effect of the meditation is supposed to be onto us, to be able to benefit, the benefit of meditation. Now, so how do we know that after taking up meditation, we are on the right path with our meditation? Is there any kind of what do you call effects that we can feel?
Okay, two things. Two things. If you see an unskillful mind state coming up and you're able to let go of it faster than you did before, that's a good sign. And find it that you are less likely to get irritated by things happening in the world around you, that's a good sign.
Okay, thank you.
And when you're distracted and you're able to pull yourself away from the distraction faster, you're quicker and quicker and quicker at catching yourself until the point where you can see when the mind is not yet distracted, it's about to go out to a distraction, but you can stop it before. That's a good sign as well.
So does it mean that the person has to push himself or herself by meditating longer to be able to see the effect?
Why not? As Ajaan Mahaprabhu once said, Everyone wants to know the easy way to do difficult things. You know, how can I put forth more effort without having to put forth more effort?
Okay, thank you, Phra Ajaan.
What's the easy way to develop patience? You know?
Venerable Ajahn, could you please explain more about feeling the breath in our body? Just now you mentioned about feeling the breath, for example, in our shoulders, in different parts of the body. Does it also mean that we are manipulating or imagining about the breath or the chi flowing to the body? That is my question. Thank you.
The sensation of the breath in the body is basically how you know that you have a body. You close your eyes, extend your arm. How do you know that your arm is there? Those feelings, those are breath energy right there. And that applies, of course, to the whole rest of your body, how you feel the body from within. The breath is already there, you already feel it. The question is, do you perceive it as breath? Or do you perceive it as something solid? Or what is the perception you hold to it? And here we're recommending that you apply the perception of breath to it and then see what that allows you to do with the different sensations in the body.
Does it mean that the breath is our wind element? Can we understand it in this way?
Can we do what?
Wind element. Wind.
It's the wind element, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the thing about the wind element is it can do a lot of things that the earth element cannot do. So if you just perceive this as just earth, there's nothing much you can do with it. But if you perceive it as breath or wind element, then you can think, okay, it's not flowing well. What would allow it to flow more smoothly? What would allow it to go to areas where it feels blocked? And by releasing the attention, you actually can change the way you perceive it.
I think it's easier to understand when we use the word wind element, because when we say breath, we will perceive that the breath is like in-breath and out-breath. At least it sounds to me in that way.
Okay, well think of it as, wind element is one way of thinking about it. I personally don't find wind useful.
Okay.
I find breath more useful because it is the way the breath flows in, or the way this element flows in your bloodstream and in your nerves is related to the way you breathe in and out. And it's good to see that relationship.
Thank you.
We are at 8:30 now. Yeah. So we'll take, perhaps this will be the second last question.
Just hold on a moment. There's a question here.
Phra Ajaan, just now you were saying that we cannot chant our way to nirvana. May I know, is it possible to meditate, for a person, is it possible to meditate out of depression?
And meditate out of depression?
Meaning that if that person is taking medication for depression, by practicing meditation for a good amount of time, maybe like slowly he can be weaned out of the medication.
It's the best way to get out of depression. Especially, as I said, it has to be a meditation method where it emphasizes your agency in making choices. And you see, if I choose to breathe this way, I have this result. If I breathe that way, I have that result. You see that I can make a difference. And from that, you can build more and more confidence that yes, it is worthwhile to engage in the world.
Yeah, but the doctor, according to the psychiatrist, they always say that to the person who is depressed and taking medication that it's not advisable to stop the medication.
It depends on the kind of meditation you're doing. If it's just the noting practice, noting, rise, fall, don't do that. Because that tends to cut away at your sense of agency. If you give a meditation method which is more involved in being proactive in how you relate to the body, how you relate to your perceptions. That counteracts the depression.
So this is a particular type of meditation that is suitable for a person with depression.
Right.
Is there a name for this meditation?
It's called breath meditation.
I beg your pardon? Breath
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 meditation. Yes.
meditation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we will take the last question from the floor. I know the brother behind is holding the microphone. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ajaan. I think there were two previous questions before. We were talking about the perception of wind and earth for meditation. So it seems that you said that the perception influences the quality of the meditation. So I'm just wondering if, how do you know, I mean, if you were to perceive the wind, it would probably be more beneficial or skillful than if you were to perceive it as earth, right? So how is perception different from imagination in this case?
It plays a role. But there's imagination which is totally unrelated to reality. And then there's the imagination which allows you to see what's actually happening. Like when you were a child and someone told you that the world was round, you had to imagine it, right? You didn't have any proof. And it's only as you grow up and you begin to deal with the world and you find out to fly from Los Angeles to Singapore, you fly near Alaska. Now, if the world were flat, it wouldn't work that way. But the shortest route from Los Angeles to Singapore goes just south of Alaska. So what you needed was that active imagination that would allow for this to be true. And this is how you test, so it's not just pure imagination, that if you hold a perception in mind, it actually enables you to do things you couldn't have done before, or to understand things you couldn't understand before. That that element of imagination is actually skillful.
Okay, so from my understanding of this is that all perceptions are imaginations, but some perceptions are more skillful than others, is that right?
Some perceptions are closer to reality and some perceptions are more useful. When the Buddha was teaching perceptions that are useful and true.
So, okay, then the next question is, all perceptions that are closer to reality, are they necessarily more useful, or it's only the ones that are useful that are more, that's more skillful for?
No, some perceptions are true, but they're pretty useless, especially for your meditation. So you're trying to figure out which perceptions are true and useful and beneficial right now. I mean, it's the same with the Buddha's standards for his own speech would be 1, it's true, 2, it's beneficial, 3, it's timely. And this applies to perceptions as well. Is this perception true? Is it beneficial? And is this at the right time for that perception?
Okay, and if you have a perception that is useful but it's not true, is that going to be?
No.
Thank you very much, Ajaan.
Ajaan, I have a last request who came to me here for the last question. May I ask the
Sure.
question? Yeah. So Ajaan, if we remove the feeding tubes of food and water of a person who seems to be unconscious, have we committed the act of killing?
No. No. When you kill someone, the standard for that is if that person were left alone and they would die on their own, the question is what you're doing speeding up that process? And if you are actually speeding it up from what would happen if the person were left alone, totally, then that would be killing. But here's a case where you're extending their life already, and now you're just allowing it to end on its own. That's not killing.
Thank you, Ajaan. I hope the person who asked the question urgently has gotten the answer.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh,
Can I
okay,
have
one
one
more
more
question.
It's
Short one, please,
actually not
brother.
a question. I had to tell something from my own experience that I have been suffering for depression for a long while, for many years, and now I'm feeling much better. And two things that really helped me is one is from a book called Reality Transurfing, and it says reduce inner and outer importance. Reduce inner and outer importance. And then another thing that really helped me is teaching by Padmasambhava, self-liberation through seeing with naked awareness. So I just wanted to tell that to
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing with everyone. So finally, may I close the forum? So
There's one more question.
one more question. Is that one more question?
I think let's take the very last question for the day.
Rajan, maybe?
Rajan?
Sure, sure.
Sure.
What the hell?
Longpo, I would like to know, is it when we send metta to a person when we meditate in a very great loving and peace feeling than a neutral feeling, is it more beneficial to the person we send metta?
I didn't get the first half of your question. Could you take your mask off so I can hear it?
I would like to know if we send metta to a person during our meditation in a great loving peace feeling than a neutral feeling, is it more beneficial to the person?
Okay, the metta that comes from a concentrated mind is stronger than the meditation that comes when your mind is not concentrated. Now the question of really loving the person or being more neutral about the person doesn't matter, but it's the strength of your concentration. Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, Phra Ajaan Thanissaro, for your insightful discussion, answering all our questions so patiently. And let us say 3 big sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We'll proceed with the next item, for tonight,
Sure.
which is, Sister Poson.
Now we would like to invite Brother Stewart, our organizing chairperson, to represent all of us to offer the Pavarana to Phra Ajaan Thanissaro. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now we would like to invite all the Ajaans and all the Venerable to be on stage for a group photo.